At this time, the government will call Jacobi Boyd to the stand. Jacobi Boyd. All right. Mr. Boyd, if you'd come forward. When you get up to this chair, remain standing until you take the oath, and then you may be seated. You may be seated. Please state and spell your name for the record. Jacobi Boyd. Jacobiboyd. Good morning, Mr. Boyd. Good morning. Mr. Boyd, how old are you? I'm 25. Do you have a nickname? Co. Mr. Boyd, you're presently incarcerated. Is this right? Yes, sir. And do you know what you're incarcerated for? Yes, sir. And what is that? Drugs, guns, murder, attempted murder. Could we move the microphone just a tiny bit? Yes. See if you can move that microphone a little bit closer. There we go. Thank you. Could you say that again? I'm sorry. I didn't quite hear that. Drugs, guns, murder, attempted murder, shootings. That was here in federal court? Yes, sir. Have you been sentenced yet? Yes, sir. For the crimes that you just described? Yes, sir. And what were you sentenced to, do you know? 40 years. Now, you did plead guilty to participating in a gun and drug conspiracy, right? Yes, sir. As part of those conspiracies, you admitted to killing someone, didn't you? Yes, sir. Now, in connection with your guilty plea, did you sign a plea agreement with the government? Yes, sir. You actually signed 2 plea agreements with the government. Isn't that right, sir? Yes, sir. Now, before you signed the 2 plea agreements, did you read them carefully with your lawyer? Yes, sir. And you understood everything that was in them, correct? Yes, sir. Your Honor, I'd like to call up, and I believe it has been admitted into evidence, Government Exhibit 225-A. 225-A. Mr. Boyd, we have Government Exhibit 225-A in front of you. Do you see it on the screen in front of you? Yes, sir. Is that the first plea agreement that you signed with the government? Yes, sir. Do you see the date on the document? Yes, sir. And what date is that? January 13th, 2015. You initialed every page? Yes, sir. And you signed the last page, correct? Yes, sir. All right. Let's go to, there it is. You signed the last page on January 13th, 2015? Yes, sir. Let's go to Government Exhibit 225-C, please. Do you recognize this document? Yes, sir. What's the date of it? October 30th, 2015. And is this a second plea agreement? A second plea agreement or second sentencing agreement that you signed? Yes, sir. And you initialed every page? Yes, sir. And you were represented by an attorney when you signed every page? Yes, sir. Now, both of those documents, I think 22-A in particular, do they discuss cooperating with the government? Yes, sir. And what do you remember them saying about cooperating with the government? What do you remember? Like, what you mean by what do I remember? What do you recall that the document said about cooperation with the government? That I must be totally truthful. What would happen if you gave testimony that was not truthful to your plea agreement? Do you understand? The plea agreement would be canceled. And that's both of them, correct? Uh-huh. Do you know if your plea agreement says that the government would do anything for you if you testified, even after you had been sentenced? No, sir. Have any promises been made to you for your testimony today by the government? No, sir. Now, is it your understanding that if you cooperate with the government, that the government may bring your cooperation to the attention of the court, correct? Yes, sir. Now, after you executed these plea agreements with the government, isn't it true, sir, that you actually wrote a couple of letters to my office to one of my supervisors? Yes, sir. To sort of talk to him about cooperation. Do you remember that? Yes, sir. Let's pull up government exhibit. Actually, it's just exhibit 281, please. That's the very first page. Do you recognize the first page? Yes, sir. And it's stamped February of 2016. Is that on or about the time that you remember writing this letter? Yes, sir. It's addressed to Maurice Landrew, who is a supervisor in my office? Yes, sir. And you had spoken to Mr. Landrew before, in addition to myself, correct? Yes, sir. That's how you knew how to send him a letter? Yes, sir. Let's go to the next page, please. And that would be 279 is the bait stamp at the bottom. We don't have to read the letter. But what do you remember about this letter? Why did you write it? To basically help myself. What did you say in the letter? What are you talking about? I just wanted Mr. Landrew to know that, I was ready to help myself out. Let's go to Exhibit 282, please. Do you recognize this? Yes, sir. What is that? It was the second letter I wrote. And again to Mr. Landrew? Yes, sir. And what was the purpose of this letter? I was trying to see, if I could, a specific number, a specific time number. At the point that you wrote this letter, you had agreed to cooperate. Yes, sir. But you still had no idea what that cooperation meant in terms of a possible reduction in sentence? No, sir. So is that why you wrote this second letter? Yes, sir. You were trying to get a number? Yes, sir. Did anyone from my office, including Mr. Landrew or myself, did we ever write you back? No, sir. Did we ever pick up the phone and call you? No, sir. So to this day, Mr. Boyd, do you have any idea whether or not you will actually get a reduction in exchange for your cooperation with the government? No, sir. Who is the only person that can make that decision? The judge. That's your understanding? Yes, sir. So is it also your understanding that even if the government were to promise you a specific amount, is that binding on the judge? No, sir. The judge is the only one that can make that decision? Yes, sir. He can reject something that we suggest, right? Yes. Objection, leading. Yes, let's not lead the witness. All right. You've been incarcerated since when? December 5th, 2013. 2013? Yes, sir. Do you have any other felony convictions within the last 10 years? Yes, sir. What are those? Possession of crack and aggravated battery by shooting. In what years were those two matters? Repeat it. In what years were those two matters? What years did they happen? No, just the convictions. 2013. Mr. Boyd, what part of New Orleans are you from? Central City. Is that where you were born? No, sir. Is that where you grew up? Yes, sir. Did you ever move away? Yes, sir. When did you do that? When I was 13. 13? Yes, sir. Why did you move away? My grandmother sent me back to my mom. I'm sorry? My grandma sent me back to my mom. So where was that part of town? The Florida Projects. Did you ever move away from New Orleans after that? Yes, after Katrina. After Katrina, you moved away? Yeah. And where did you go? Minnesota. Minnesota? Uh-huh. How long did you stay there? 6 months the first time and 8 months the second time. When did you move back to New Orleans, Louisiana? At the end of 2006 or beginning of 2007. Did you start school? Not right there, no. What grade was the next grade that you were about to start? 10th. Now, when you moved back at the end of 2006, I think you said, or beginning of 2007, had you ever heard of a group called the Young Melph Mafia? Not at the time. What about after you moved back? Yes. How did you hear about the Young Melph Mafia? We just basically started it. You said we. Let's talk about that. Was there a group before the Young Melph Mafia that you were associated with that went by a different name? When we first, started the little group thing, it was just for fun. We was calling ourselves, some of us were calling ourselves KRS, Killer Rock Stars. Killer Rock Stars? Yeah. And some of those members then began calling themselves something else. We started calling ourselves YMM. When the group that you were with started calling yourselves the Young Melph Mafia or the YMM, what was its original purpose? Why did you get together? Just to have some fun. Like track girls, just to have fun. It was just all about fun.